Well, when you look at the benefit increases from April to April this year, we're talking about 13 to 30% increases. And so that exceeds what the inflationary increases that we've seen. That doesn't mean that there's not families struggling, but it certainly hasn't been, or the advantage of them hasn't been eaten up by the inflationary increases.
Right, OK. So the Fairer Futures group came out this week and said that they did their calculations. We're just going to take one. Couple on the job seeker benefit with 2 kids actually need $307 a week to participate in society. You're giving them $168 total. There's a big difference.
There is a difference, but with regards to their figures, they're talking about a particular group of people living in a particular part of country. So it does depend on what different families' costs are, where they live, what their housing costs are, a range of different things. We are playing a bit of a catch-up game after much inaction over many years.
Yeah, no, but that is, you know, you've been in for 5 years. We can't go back and blame National now. I mean, you've had the report, the ball is in your court. Are you delivering?
I think we are delivering. These are significant increases. They are above what the WEAG had recommended with respect to families on benefit with children. And there are other things that we are doing as a government that helps to address poverty as well.
Sure. So they're above, you know, you're saying you met the WEAG report, the Welfare Expert Advisory Group, recommendation in one area, but you haven't fully implemented all their recommendations at all, have you?
Well, the thing is with those recommendations is a lot of them are not tick box and they're done. There's ongoing work required. But we have done a lot, Simon, you know, increasing benefits, lifting abatement thresholds, lifting working for families credits, reinstating the training incentive allowance, investing in upskilling and training programs. There's a lot.
That's a long list. Have you implemented fully even one of them?
Fully, even one of them. Well, income adequacy, I don't think that we could ever fully address. It's something that is ongoing and we need to keep making.
Just one of them, like in terms of sanctions, you removed one sanction, but not all the sanctions recommended. Have you implemented fully one of those?
I think that it would be oversimplifying that report to say that you can just check something off and it's done. And I don't think that that was their intention. I actually think that when they wrote the report, they expected systems change and progressive action to ensure that we're continually working for families, and we are.
Transformative was a phrase used by the Prime Minister when you came to power and by yourself. Do you believe you are being transformative?
I do. But transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's about a series of deliberate steps that bring about the progress and the change that you want. And we have been absolutely committed from the start, from the families package through to the benefit increases that we're doing now. But there's more to do, and we're committed to that overhaul, and that's a program of work. It's not one action.
So is this it for net core benefit increases under this government this term?
I think we need to be very clear, it's not just about increasing benefits,
Yeah,
Simon.
OK, but let's just talk about net core benefits. Is this it under this government this term?
Look, I'm not going to preempt what is in and out or out on our program, but I will say they were significant benefit increases. It's not the only action that we will be taking to address income adequacy, to respond to and address poverty in this country. But I'll also say it doesn't just come down to benefit increases. It is about things like making public transport affordable, healthcare affordable, education affordable, about making sure people have access to food. There are a range of things, public housing, a range of things that need to happen. So it's an all-of-government program.
Sure.
It's not just about the welfare
In terms
system.
of access to food, I mean, the Salvation Army has told me that their food bank demand, or food parcel demand, is rising. It's still 30% above pre-COVID levels. And that's at the same time as the WEAG calculated these benefit levels. So again, does that mean that these increases are out of date?
Well, keep in mind with the food bank demands, we are still in the midst of COVID. There's a big program going on to ensure that we can get food to whānau so they can self-isolate safely as well. So it's as much a response to the social needs as what it is the health needs at the moment. So we're in a very different time because of the pandemic. And so I do think we need to keep it in context.
OK. Can't blame the pandemic totally, though.
No, I wouldn't blame the pandemic for everything. There are issues and challenges that we're all faced with that have been exacerbated by the pandemic, and there's certainly a response that's had to be initiated or done on top of everything else because of the pandemic. And so some of that demand that we're seeing at the food banks is because of the need to support families to be able to self-isolate safely.
Is there a real disconnect here because you've got record low unemployment at the moment? Employers are crying out for skilled and unskilled workers. Yet you've got 100,000 people on JobSeeker who are ready to work, many of them long-term beneficiaries. Are you failing to lift these people up into work?
Well, no. The problem has been that over the years, actually there's been a number of people that haven't been supported to upskill and train to get into the jobs that are available in the labour market. And so we hear it all the time from different sectors that they don't have the right people with the right skills to be able to take on the jobs. We've invested heavily in this space through a myriad of programs, whether it be Mana Mahi, our Apprenticeship Boost program, Flexi Wage. We actually need to support people to get the skills that they need to be able to go into the jobs that are available.
Sure. Are the people that are in those programs just, short-term beneficiaries? What about the people that are sort of stuck on JobSeeker? What are you doing for them, targeting them to lift them into the workplace?
Well, keep it in perspective. 2 years after the GFC, 13.1% of the working age population was on benefit. 2 years after the pandemic started, we're at 11.1% of the working age population. It's not excessive given what we've gone through. But our investment is in making sure that people can get the skills to match the labour market. And that investment wasn't there before we got in, Simon, so it's going to take a little bit of time. All
right, let's move on to another portfolio. You are the Minister for Disability Issues. The disability allowance is $66 a week, and that's rising by less than $4 a week in this raft of changes. One advocate told me that this is an extra bottle of milk for a community that has many extra costs. Are you happy with that level of increase?
I think keeping in mind that a lot of people that are on benefit have health conditions or disabilities. So there's the increase to the disability allowance that is adjusted through CPI, but they'll also benefit from the increases to benefits and the range of other supports that we have in place. If they've got children, the family tax credit on top of that.
This population is growing, and if they tell us that they've sort of been pushed to one side, they're not receiving enough now, and now you've got a new ministry coming in July. What do you need to give them an adequate standard of living?
Well, I think the point that we've got a new ministry really speaks to what you're saying, is actually we need the machine in place to be able to have oversight of making sure that we're making the progress we need to for disabled people. We've got that, we've got the accessibility legislation coming up, we're transferring disability support services from the health system into the new ministry and rolling out the Enabling Good Lives program, recognising that for far too long progress has been slow for disabled people, but we haven't had the machinery in place to actually get the progress that we need.
Is that machinery going to help with one of the most pressing issues, which is housing? And now, as cities intensify, accessibility is going to be an even bigger issue. So what sort of pressure are you putting on, say, Housing Minister Megan Woods to get accessibility into the building code?
Well, I mean, if we just look at the public housing build, there was no kind of target in place with regards to the number of houses that would be accessible until we got into government, and that's something that we're continuing to work.
So that's the public housing build. In terms of a broader thing of the building code, I mean, could you give us a date by when you're going to say we can get accessibility to be taken into account in the building code to ensure accessibility?
I certainly wouldn't want to speak too much on someone else's portfolio.
But you can pressure her.
The accessibility legislation and the way that it's setting it up will help us to ensure that in crucial areas like that, we can actually hold accountable the agencies to ensure that they are doing the work to make the progress with respect to accessibility.
When does that legislation come in?
The legislation will be introduced to the House in July this year and should be passed about a year after, so next year.
OK. Another area that you're responsible are the changes to Oranga Tamariki, new legislation to how Oranga Tamariki is going to be scrutinised. And critics say that this legislation is going to gut the office of the Children's Commissioner, who has been a vocal advocate for our most vulnerable. So why do it?
The actual legislation is about tightening up and ensuring that we have better monitoring in place with regards to state care of our children. I think everyone accepts that there hasn't been the oversight that is needed. We're not in any way undermining...
Is that independent oversight, or is that the oversight within the organisation itself?
Well, there's independent oversight that we need to have that in place. Now, it's not undermining the Office for the Children's Commissioner, it's actually building on it.
Māori groups that I've spoken with say that they're concerned that this independence of the Children's Commissioner is being taken away or diluted, and that this monitoring is going closer to the Crown, which is sort of in defiance of what the Waitangi Tribunal said?
No, they'll still have their independence. If the independent monitor decides to undertake any type of work, the Crown can't tell the independent monitor they can't look into this or they can't monitor these particular things. What the Crown will be able to do in the way that we're setting up is actually add to the work program and say, can you look at this for us as well? Which actually I think is something that enhances that power and is really important for the children that the system is in place for.
Yeah, just fine. Let's talk about the children. I mean, it's not your portfolio, but 500 children and young people were abused in the care of OT in 20 to 21. That's a report out this week. Worst figures since OT started reporting them. It seems that they have the scrutiny there. It's just that the system needs to be fixed, not necessarily the monitoring of it. I mean, is this a waste of time?
It is not a waste of time. The monitoring mechanism holds the system to account and ensures we can see where there are gaps or where there are failings. I actually stand by the decisions we're making with regards to the independent monitor versus the advocacy role of the Children's Commission versus the investigative role of the Ombudsman. I think it's really powerful that you have those three arms working.
Will these changes ensure better outcomes for these children under OT?
We wouldn't be doing this if we didn't think that this was the best way to go about ensuring that, Simon.
Minister Sepuloni, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.